In a dense forest, hidden away from bustling towns and far from human distractions, there lived a gentle monk whose heart radiated peace. He had left behind the chaos of the world to live in a small cave where his days were spent in deep meditation and helping those who crossed his path. One calm evening, as the sky turned gold and birds began to return to their nests, a tiny mouse tumbled from the sky, dropped unexpectedly from a crow's beak, and landed with a frightened squeak at the monk's feet. It was bruised and trembling, helpless and scared. With a soft smile, the monk picked it up carefully, brought it into his modest home, and offered it food and warmth. From that moment on, the little mouse became a part of his quiet world. Time passed, and under the monk's care, the mouse flourished. It grew strong, well-fed, and content. But peace never stays too long in the wild. One day, a forest cat caught sight of the mouse and chased it to the cave. Terrified, the mouse darted inside, hiding under the folds of the monk's robe, its tiny body shaking with fear. The monk gently chased the cat away, but he couldn't ignore the mouse's terror. His compassionate heart ached. He thought, how can this creature ever live in peace when danger lurks at every corner? With a deep breath, he called upon his spiritual powers and turned the mouse into a cat. Now it had nothing to fear from other cats. With its new form, the cat roamed freely, exploring the forest with confidence it had never known. For a while, life was good, but fate has a way of testing peace. A wild dog appeared one day and began chasing the cat through the trees. It barely made it back to the monk's cave, panting and terrified once again. Seeing its fear, the monk, full of kindness, transformed the cat into a dog. Bigger, stronger, and braver, it now had nothing to fear from cats or dogs. Days turned into weeks, and the dog wandered happily through the forest. Until one afternoon, a massive tiger noticed it and lunged with terrifying speed. The chase was fierce, but the dog, overwhelmed and scared for its life, found its way back to the safety of the cave. There it sat, trembling again, seeking refuge in the same arms that had always welcomed it. With a heavy sigh, the monk touched its head and transformed it into a tiger, the most feared and powerful animal in the forest. Now the once tiny mouse had become a majestic tiger. The jungle bowed before him, and no creature dared challenge his authority. He roamed like a king, proud and unchallenged. But power comes with its own set of challenges. One fateful day, as he wandered through the dense trees, a sudden crack echoed through the air, a gunshot from a hunter's rifle. Startled by the blast, the mighty tiger ran, heart pounding, back to the cave, seeking shelter in the only place he had ever truly felt safe. Seeing his fear, the monk again offered compassion and transformed the tiger into a human being. For the first time, the mouse now man stood tall, felt the strength of human intellect and the freedom of civilization. He mingled with villagers, tasted new experiences, and dreamed of settling down, building a life among people. But even in this new life, a shadow grew in his heart. The monk's role in his journey haunted him. What if someone found out he was once a mouse? What if the monk revealed his secret? What if everything he had gained crumbled into dust because of a single truth? That fear festered, grew claws and teeth, and soon turned into something darker. He convinced himself that the only way to protect his secret was to silence the one person who knew it. So one evening, driven by paranoia and fear, disguised as self-preservation, he picked up a knife and walked back into the forest, toward the monk's cave, the very place that had saved him over and over again. But when he stepped inside, his footsteps masked in silence, the monk looked up, calm, knowing, unmoved. His eyes met the man's, and in that moment he understood everything. The pain of betrayal flickered for a moment, but without anger, without fear, the monk chanted once more. In a blink, the man vanished, and there, on the floor of the cave, sat a tiny mouse, trembling, ashamed, and afraid. It let out a squeak and scurried into the forest, never to return again. That story, though it seems distant and magical, is really about us. It reflects a powerful truth about our own lives. Every step the mouse took, from helplessness to power, from fear to confidence, was shaped by the thoughts it allowed to grow. It was given strength, protection, even humanity. But all it took was one poisonous thought to undo it all. A whisper of fear, a touch of insecurity, and the rest came crashing down. This is how life works for all of us. We are not brought down by others as much as we are by our own minds. A simple emotion, jealousy, anger, fear, if left unchecked, begins to grow. It clouds our judgment, distorts our reality, and before we know it, we're making decisions not from clarity, but from chaos. In a world where comparison is constant, where validation is a currency and distractions are always just one click away, our thoughts become the battleground, and if we aren't careful, they can become our enemies. But it doesn't have to be this way. The same mind that can destroy can also create. It can imagine, build, heal, and transform. Every choice, every step forward or backward, begins first as a thought. Master your mind, and you master your destiny. Ignore it, and even the strongest foundation can crumble from a single crack. So much of life happens in silence, within the spaces between our thoughts, in the quiet corners of our minds where no one else can see. That's where it all begins. The mouse didn't ask to fall from the sky, didn't choose to live in fear, didn't demand to be saved. But one act of kindness changed everything. It's easy to believe that external forces shape us, but this story reveals a deeper truth. Transformation begins within, but it can either lift us to heights or pull us into ruin depending on what we nurture inside. Every gift the mouse received came from love and trust, but the moment fear took root, it began to twist his reality. What was once gratitude turned to suspicion. What was once humility turned to arrogance. That shift didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual erosion of perspective. Just like that, we too can find ourselves walking down roads built on small assumptions, unspoken fears, or silent comparisons, and before we know it, our actions are being guided by emotions we never meant to carry. In a world where strength is often mistaken for dominance and confidence for ego, the mouse believed that power would set him free. But true strength was never about becoming a cat, a dog, a tiger, or even a man. It was about the courage to stay grounded. It was about the wisdom to remember where you came from and the grace to carry it without shame. The moment he let fear dictate his choices, he lost all that he had gained. There's something timeless about this tale. It whispers a warning we all need to hear. No matter how far we rise, no matter how much we grow, if we forget the essence of who we are, if we let fear lead instead of trust, we risk losing the very core of our humanity. That's why we must stay alert, not just to the world around us, but to the thoughts within us. Because it's not the world that shapes us. It's what we believe about ourselves, about others, and about what we think we need to protect. The monk never withheld his kindness. He gave again and again, not because he expected loyalty, but because compassion was his nature. And yet, even his patience had a limit, not out of anger, but out of understanding. He knew that no form, no transformation, no elevation can truly help someone who isn't ready to confront their own thoughts. That final transformation wasn't a punishment. It was a mirror. It showed the mouse who he really was, not in body, but in spirit. In our lives, we're all on that journey, from vulnerability to strength, from survival to growth. But each time we step forward, life will test us, not with tigers or hunters, but with envy, insecurity, loneliness, and doubt. And in those moments, we must choose. Do we let those thoughts define us? Or do we pause, reflect, and take back control of the story we're writing? The difference between peace and chaos isn't what happens around us. It's what we choose to hold inside. Be mindful of your thoughts because they are the seeds of your future. Water the ones that bring you light and uproot the ones that whisper fear. Because if you don't, those whispers can grow loud enough to drown out everything else.